Hi everybody, I'm David Lisot for Coin Television. We're here in Kansas City, Missouri. It's the famous International Paper Money Convention sponsored by Lynn Knight, and there's all kinds of people here buying and selling banknotes, paper money, scripophily, autographs, all kinds of things. And we're going to go and talk to the dealers and collectors and find out what kind of cool items they brought for you, our Coin Television viewers.
We always have something cool. I've got one note here, for example, from Mali, the country of Mali in Africa. And great engraving, great image, and everybody likes this note. All these countries like Mali used to be part of the West African states, but these were when they were independent. And this note looks like it was printed yesterday. It's 35 years old. Just amazing.
And how about the grading on it? How difficult is it to find uncirculated notes?
It's getting harder and harder. In a lot of countries of the world where money is used every day over and over and over, paper money just gets so beat up you can't believe it. If you don't get it early when it comes out, you'll never find it in decent grade. This is an uncirculated note and one of the best I've ever seen.
What kind of value?
Well, this has got a price on it of about $1,800. You might find it more, maybe a little bit less, but not much. Here's another great note. It's from Reunion. Most people haven't heard about Reunion. It's off the coast of Africa, on the east coast of Africa. The thing about Reunion is it's French, and there's 35 different French colonies that have produced banknotes over the years. And what happened with Reunion is that when France went to the euro, Reunion went to the euro. So you don't find any of these notes anymore. And this is a note from about 1971. And again, we're looking now at 40 some years, almost 50 years actually coming up. And these are hard to find in any condition, but that's because now they're all euros.
And again, this one seems to be overprinted.
It was. What they did was periodically they have to revalue their money. And what happened with this particular note, and they reduced it to 10 francs. And that's what this little red overprint is. It's a renomination, but in a downward direction.
And what kind of value?
This one is about $800, $900. You just don't find these anymore. Queen Elizabeth is now the longest serving monarch in the world. She was tied, she was in third place until a few years ago. And the King of Thailand died, and the head of state of Samoa died. And there's nobody even close to Queen Elizabeth. And over the years, money has been printed since early 1950s with her image on it. And last count, there were something like 33 different portraits of Queen Elizabeth that have been printed on money from different countries of the world.
And how important is third-party grading?
Well, we think it's real important because that's what we do. But for people who don't grade their own notes or can't look at the notes, can't come to a show like this, it gives them some sense of security that somebody's looked at the notes and besides themselves and says, this is what we rated. And we put our number on it, we put our reputation behind it as well.
Have a couple items to show. Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me about it.
All right, this first one is a $50 Confederate note issued at Montgomery. They issued 1,607 of them. This one's in nice condition, and a current value of it for a collector's value, to give you an idea of the scarcity and value, would be about $15,000.
And
So,
what's the theme on it?
the theme on it is back during the period during the Civil War, slaves hoeing cotton in a cotton field.
How is that politically found today?
Probably not so well, but there are certain people that think that differently, and they think it kind of honors what went on back then, and it shows that slaves during that period were really valuable and that they performed duties, and it's different than what people might think really went on now.
Okay, what's the next one?
Okay. The next one we have here is a note issued during the Civil War also on the bank of Roxboro, North Carolina. very small bank, very few notes were issued, and it's particularly hard to find them in nice condition. The paper was a very poor rag content, and most of the time you find them with little pieces out of them. But it's a rare note, and it's issued on a very scarce bank.
And why did the individual banks issue paper?
Part of the reason was there wasn't any money circulating in the South. This was before the federal government started issuing notes, and it was just a means to facilitate their customers so they would have a circulating currency. And gold, silver, copper, all of that, it disappeared out of the economy, so they had to have some means of conducting business.
And what kind of value?
This is about $2,500. And condition is important on this. Most of the time they're in very low grade. Next one is on the Bank of North America, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's a particularly attractive, beautiful note, a lot of color, a lot of appeal, and it was issued during the same time period in the early 1860s.
For our viewers that don't know, what are the holes in it?
The holes are a form of cancellation to take the note out of circulation, to mean it was supposed to be not redeemed, it had been paid off, and it couldn't go back out in general circulation.
And why did they issue these notes?
For basically the same reason, to have a means of currency. It was still legal for the banks to do this, and it was a means to facilitate having currency in the market, gold, silver, and copper, were just scarce commodities.
What kind of value?
This is about $1,500.
Well, if you're asking me personally, yes, I got lucky today, and I've got a couple of very pretty things. I don't know much about them because I haven't had a chance to take them home and study them. Okay. Well, they're both from the almost end of the obsolete note era. At this point, the Civil War had started, and the federal government was already working on its plans to issue what became called national currency. So this is kind of the end of the era for the private banks issuing their own currency. They're both from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm interested in Wisconsin as a state because my grandfather was an immigrant who became a banker in Wisconsin. I live in New York, but New York is too big a task for me to take on, so I collect Wisconsin. And as I say, these are both from Green Bay, both from the tail end. They would have been replaced by national banks once the national bank charter started to flow. First of all, the imagery on these notes is about as good as the art ever got. At this point, the many small, fine banknote making firms had consolidated into a couple of behemoths, but the quality of the work they were putting out, both from the standpoint of the aesthetics as well as the anti-counterfeiting devices, was really superb. It's been argued by a friend of mine in New York, Mark Tomasco, that there's many art forms, many industrial art forms in the world, but this is one where the U.S. unquestionably was the finest at the time. Nobody did it better than the U.S. engraving firms, banknote engraving, security engraving, and these are examples of as good as it gets, frankly, for the artwork. So you have a very lovely central vignette here of a farmer doing his job in the fields, his plow being pulled by a couple of horses, a lovely little lady here down on the right. When I get a little more time, I'm going to get a chance to do the research and learn a little bit more about these. Here you have another form of agricultural activity. You've got wood choppers working in the forest, chopping down trees. This was a very important industry in Wisconsin at the time. Bringing down the trees was huge business in the Midwest in those days. So again, beautiful banknotes, nice vignettes, evocative of hard work and all the things that made America great, and also very appropriate to the region where these came out of. Every banknote tells a story. You can tell history through the money.
What kind of value?
I don't really want to talk about that because they're valuable to me because they're beautiful, but I also will say they don't come cheap. And then one of the things that makes these particularly difficult to find is A, they were late in the period, B, these have not been canceled, they're fairly high grade, and when notes have the extra color that these do, they're also much more esteemed in the collector fraternity. So it's a lot of lunch money, I'll just leave it at that. I don't like to talk about value. So.
Yes, of course. I mean, at Spink, we do, at London, we do 2 World Banknotes auction each year, and I mean, every time we've got highlights, every time. So, just got one of them to show you. So we've got this this Ming note. So that was printed. That was printed in about sort of 1368 to about 1399. Date is unclear since it doesn't actually say on here, and is one of the earliest printed banknotes on paper. And these sort of paper are made from mulberry bark. So you can see that it's actually very fragile, even though it's just a scan. It's very fragile, and it's very large size. So it's about the size of this catalogue, or a bit bigger actually.
And what kind of value did it trade for?
So we about £5,000. About this note, yeah. So in our past April auction, we had a very good collection of Indian notes from Mr. and Miss Doctors Ed and Joanne Dower. So they've been known for their British Commonwealth, and now they have offered their Indian notes to us in the past April auction. And one of my favourite notes is this Reserve Bank of India with the Burma overprint and King George V on your right. And I think it's just a striking note, and especially rare in this such great condition.
Why did they overprint, if you know?
So during that time, in my knowledge, that Burma was under India rule, so British India rule. So it was just printed on an Indian banknote, just used in Burma. Yep. So the next one. So everyone that collects banknotes should know a Zanzibar. So this was printed by Waterloo and Sons. Actually, my favourite printer. I mean, the colours are just amazing. Look at the colours, and this is a 1928 issue, and normally the colour trials that you see are 1908. So in our knowledge, this is the first one that we've seen, and I mean, we might see more, but this is the first one that we've seen, and we're just absolutely astonished by this.
And what kind of price would that trade?
So about £60,000, a hefty one, this one.